Few missionaries have combined tenderness and courage as strikingly as Amy Carmichael. Small in stature, often frail in health, and misunderstood by many, she became a spiritual mother to hundreds of children and a fearless rescuer of the forgotten. In the heat and dust of southern India, her life would become a quiet but relentless declaration of war against injustice. She was born December 16, 1867, in the village of Mill Isle, North Ireland, into a devout Presbyterian milling family of Covenanter heritage. Her childhood was secure and deeply shaped by Scripture. As a little girl, she once prayed earnestly that God would change her brown eyes to blue. When the answer did not come, she was disappointed. Only years later would she see the quiet mercy in that refusal. In India, her dark eyes allowed her to blend more naturally among the people she longed to serve. What seemed a childish prayer, unanswered, became one of her earliest lessons in trusting the wisdom of God. Yet Scripture in the home and salvation in the heart are not the same thing. Though the language of the Bible filled her childhood, knowing it did not make her a Christian. It was not until she was 15 that Amy truly surrendered her life to Christ. That decision would become the root from which everything else grew. One Sunday, after church, the Carmichael children stopped to help a poor elderly woman struggling under a heavy bundle. The disapproving stares of respectable churchgoers stung. But in that moment, something shifted forever inside her. And from then on, she determined that nothing would matter but what was eternal. That was a conviction she would carry into the harder years ahead, beginning with the death of her father from pneumonia in 1885, when Amy was just 18 years old. In 1893, she sailed for Japan as the first missionary sent out by the Keswick Convention. Illness forced her departure before the work had barely begun. She passed through China and Ceylon before returning briefly to England. Some questioned whether she was suited for the mission field at all, but in November 1895, she landed in India. She would not leave again. Even before she sailed, Amy knew the cost of what she was stepping into. On January 14, 1892, she wrote these words to her mother with the quiet resolve that would define her life.
To obey is better than sacrifice. Many difficulties have risen in my mind. They seem very great. The crooked places seem very crooked. But it seems to me that all he asks is that we should take the one step he shows us, and in the simplest, most practical trust, leave all results to him.
At first, she labored under the Church of England's Zenana Missionary Society, engaging in evangelistic work among women. She adopted Indian dress and learned the language, refusing to live at a comfortable distance from the people she served. Something troubled her about the wider missionary culture, its low expectations, its social distance from the very people it sought to reach. But Amy pressed quietly forward. Then, on March 6, 1901, everything changed. A terrified 7-year-old girl named Preena fled from a Hindu temple into the mission compound and begged Amy for protection. Through that single, trembling child, she uncovered a hidden horror. Young girls were being sold into the temple system, exploited under the cover of religion in a practice called Devadasi, their suffering hidden behind the respectability of ancient custom. Amy Carmichael declared war. Again and again, children fled to her. Each rescue risked retaliation. At one point, she faced the very real possibility of imprisonment for what authorities called the kidnapping of a child. Many dismissed her reports as exaggerations. Such things simply cannot be, her critics insisted. But they were true, and she proved it. She documented the abuses carefully, pressed her case persistently, and refused to be silenced. By 1904, 17 children were under her care, and the work kept growing. Infants arrived. Boys came too, for they were also being bought and sold. What had begun with one frightened child became known as the Dohnavur Fellowship, a refuge devoted to rescuing, raising, and discipling children in the name of Christ. In 1919, she was awarded the Kayseri Hind Medal for public service in India, a rare public recognition of her work among the children of the South. Then, in 1947, after decades of persistent advocacy, the Devadasi practice was finally outlawed by an act of the Madras State Parliament. In 1931, while touring a construction site at the fellowship, Amy fell into an uncovered pit and was severely injured. For a woman who had spent decades traveling dusty roads from village to village, the confinement was a profound trial. Yet from her bed, she continued to lead, to counsel, to pray, and to write. Works such as If, A Rose from Briar, and Candles in the Dark poured from that sick room and are still widely read today. A second fall in 1948 left her confined to her quarters and permanently bedridden. Yet even then, her ministry of prayer deepened rather than diminished. What she could no longer do with her feet, she did on her knees. On January 18, 1951, at the age of 83, Amy Carmichael quietly entered the presence of the Lord she had served for more than half a century. She had sat with these children at the water's edge, walked with them through darkness, and given them a name when the world had taken everything else. She knew what God had called her to do, and she did it without apology and without rest. She had asked that no tombstone be placed over her grave. Instead, the children she had rescued placed a bird bath there, marked with the name they had given her, Amma, Mother. The fellowship at Dohnavur endured. The children she rescued grew into believers who loved Christ. The prayers she prayed continued to bear fruit long after her final breath. She never sought approval or applause. Her life was measured by obedience. From a small compound in South India and later from a sickbed, she waged war against darkness with scripture, prayer, and costly love. Living one step at a time, in the simplest trust, she walked where God led, and leaving the results to Him, she lived a life whose impact is still being felt today.